So section 5, things we're going to cover today is who you who, scratches on the windshield, little sponges, and your body is a radio. So let's just go to the first page. This first page, this card, this picture here on the left comes from a Zen tarot card series that I really like. It's called Conditioning. And basically, here's a lion with the soul, the heart of a lion, this strong character, and it's got sheep clothing tied to it. So these sheep clothing is actually tied around the lion's legs to the point that it is no longer who it was meant or born to be, right? It's in this field of sheep and allowing itself to be chained and tied up. So my goal, and what's interesting is, what I'm focused on doing here is what I'm focused on doing for myself. It's everybody's journey. Whatever job you find yourself in or whatever your relationship, it's all about your growth. So this is also my journey too, of becoming a conditioned being like all of us have over time, past lives or this life. So it's coming from this conditioning to this, where you're naked, you're exposed, but you're free. We cannot be free unless we're really willing to be completely exposed and naked to the world. So to be truly alive means innocent, loving, vulnerable, free, and powerful. And this came to me a while back. This is kind of some information. This is actually a small section out of a bigger poster-like thing I've created. Some of you all have seen it. But this is basically explaining who you are. And it's important for you to be who you are because everybody has their, you've heard of the Tao. Tao just means the way of things, reality. The earth has a Tao. It's like the summertime, springtime, all those have a specific pattern. The weather patterns, everything go off of the Tao, the way things flow. And each one of us has our own Tao. And what's happened is, over time, whether it's preachers, teachers, peers, society in general, what happens to our natural way is it gets reprogrammed, or another way to say, it gets covered over because somebody says this, like maybe you're born and your inner desire is to, whether you know it or not, you're just a free spirit, and maybe later in life you are to be like this really charismatic dance teacher that helps lots of people free their emotional bodies up, right? But then you have parents that are really conservative and they're wanting you to go to school to be a doctor. If you cave into that, which we all have a tendency to do, you wind up it's like that lion being conditioned by all the sheep, because we're born into a reality that is already conditioned. You don't already know that. It's like being born into the Matrix, if you will. You can use that analogy. Is we're born into a reality where everybody is already slaves. And so it's hard for a slave to be able to give somebody freedom. And we're moving into the realm where we are getting free. Just like bringing in the biblical principle, it's when, I wanted to say Noah, but is it Moses? Yeah, Moses. When Moses went to go get the Israelites set free, right? The interesting thing about Israelites is Ra, remember, relates to the light and the energy, Ra, the sun god, the lights. The Israelite, you could actually think about as being your brain cells being controlled by the Pharaoh, which would be the lower brain. Anyway, Moses comes in, and he helps free the Israelites, right? And they're running and running. And then the Pharaoh, the ego, you want to say that's the ego, starts chasing after what we just let go of, right? And then there's like this separation where you go through this particular... Once you reach a certain level of growth, the ego can't follow you and change you back. But we're all in certain areas where we're growing, then the ego comes up and snatches us back into slavery. And not only is it inside of us, but when we watch TV, people will say things, our family can pull us back in. It's like we're free, like the Israelites are running. And then they get pulled back into the ego of somebody. We buy into that. But when the Israelites were let free or let out of captivity by Moses, does anybody know what they were made to do for 40 years? Wandered in the desert, right? Jesus or God made the Israelites wander in the desert for 40 years before they can enter paradise. So God purposely made them wander in there. Now, there's lots of different biblical understandings of why that happened, but I take it as a metaphysical thing. Here's a slave mentality. These people were brought out of slavery, but they still had slave mentality. So they could not enter the paradise, the land of freedom, the land of having all you want, until what had to be gone? Slave mentality. That was 40 years. Children being born in freedom. They're still having children. So what happens is a lot of that consciousness of those people died off. New people were born, and then finally they could go into that reality. And you can think about your cells being the same way. You've got cells in your body that are slaves. They've got programs they go off of, and they run your life if you're not careful. So when you start reprogramming, sometimes it takes a while for that to happen. I've seen really cool stuff for quick tapping, but sometimes you have to keep at it, keep at it, keep at it, to not let the ego, the Pharaoh, pull those cells back into line, or really out of line, trying to get back in line. So it's important to acknowledge yourself, and those words are just for myself just as much for you. So let's get into who you are really. There's a genetic code, right? And this is ancestral memory and physical attributes, and this comes from the actual physical DNA of your mother and father. Okay, they blend together, and you get a blend of the different ancestral lines. Actually, every one of us is a surrogate for everybody else that came before us, which is really a lot. So part of the things that are in there are 64 codons in DNA. That also ties into 64 I Ching, which is not an accident. We're not going to go into that right now. But so the point I'm trying to get across here is the physical attributes that you have come from your ancestry, your parents specifically, because they're the further you go back, it gets more diluted, but you still are a point of that. You're like here, and all this is funneling down into you. So your physical attributes come from them, from your mother and father and their ancestral lineage. On top of that, within the DNA, my belief is that like certain issues, like say patterns, like high blood pressure was in a particular bloodline, right? High blood pressure, coming from what we already know about mind and emotions causing reality, is that to me what happened is great-great-great-grandfather had some type of emotional wounding where he picked up a pattern or a habit that eventually created a physical illness, and then that physical illness actually rewrote the DNA and it passed on. Epigenetics actually can prove that this would happen. Because ultimately, if everybody's DNA from the very beginning was perfect, how come some people have, like in their bloodline, high cholesterol and other people don't? It would all be the same, wouldn't it? No, it's epigenetics rewrites that. So your mind and your emotions quite literally rewrite your DNA. On top of that, we also have our metaphysical side. The metaphysical side is what I've come to term your universal personality code. Like a UPC, see what's being drawn there on the screen or on your piece of paper? The UPC comes on anything that you buy in the store, right? It's got a little specific lines, thick and broad, and it's got a number sequence, right? Like your number sequence would be like your social security number, so to speak. Well, every one of us has a universal personality code. It's like a magnetic grid that's stamped on you when you're born. And how you access that knowledge related to that is astrology, numerology, things like that, or give you what that magnetic code was. Okay? That magnetic code doesn't necessarily come from your parents. Your DNA, your physicality, and your mental emotional patterns do. And then the other aspect of that is the metaphysical part that comes in. It's like God's stamp on you, the universal stamp on you. And you have both sides. You have a metaphysical side and you have a physical side. And they both work together. So what does all this make up? It makes you. And you, I consider you a child of God, birthed with a very specific makeup. And makeup, you could also say, is function or purpose. So every one of us is born with a purpose. If you're alive, you have a very specific function to do or perform in the body. Just like any cell that shows up in your body, it just doesn't show up for the hell of it and just, I'm going to wander around in here and do my own. No, it's got if it's in the liver, it's got some kind of function to do with that. If it's born in the heart, it's got something to do with that. To be born a liver cell and then somebody tell you you're supposed to be a heart cell won't work. You're not even in the right area for that to happen, right? But we allow things like that to happen to us or be perverted our perception. You're also your five senses, and your five senses actually limit perception. Oh man, I erased my thing on the board. Y'all have all heard about like that there's like an ocean of consciousness. Have you ever heard the analogy of the ocean being everything and the wave And like a wave that comes up and then we go back into the ocean. Let me grab my marker. So let's just say all of reality is a huge ocean, and there's lots of waves out here. So the whole ocean, everything's the ocean, right? Even the waves, right? Are the waves separate from the ocean?
No.
No? So here is God. It's unity. This is the conscious mind, is on the outer aspect. You have your subconscious mind. And then you have what they call the superconscious mind. This is when you kind of get into start like tripping out with meditations, and then sometimes you get information directly from here. But what happens with reality is we get up in this conscious mind and we tend to think that we're separate because we're looking at all the other waves, but we're not going deep beneath the first surface where everything is the exact same. So when our five senses, when we come into a physical body, we're like this little wave, right? We're out here. We've got these separate things to experience life with, but the illusion we get caught up in because we lose this awareness that we're tied into something much more because we can't see it and feel it all the time. You can, but for the most part, as soon as we're born into this captive world of sheep, it doesn't take very long before you can even think for yourself that has already been disconnected, where you think you are no longer part of that, even though there's no way to be separate from God since you're swimming in it. It's like a fish saying, I'm not part of the ocean. No, you are part of the ocean. But we start looking at the world this way, and we look at each other this way. In reality, how we should look at each other is this way. Through God. Not through this way. It's a vertical, or, this is all limited communication, but, say God's up here. It would be, I'm going through here to connect, not through this way. Because when we go through this way to connect, this is when we have excessive needs and desires and wants. Not that isn't part of it, because you have to acknowledge your separateness, but at the same time, your unity at the same time. And sometimes that can be a hard balance. So this is like the five senses here, what I was bringing up to. And this also goes into the Chinese medicine. That's why I put the color coded here. Because the sense of sight is the wood element. The sense of taste is the earth element. Smell is metal. Hearing is water. Remember water in your ears? You spin around, how you get dizzy? Touch. Touch is fire. How you can burn your hands with fire. So the five elements right there are also your five senses. Right? So with wood, what's the emotion of wood? Anger, right? And what's a typical term that they use related to eyes and anger? If looks could kill, seeing red, all these terms relate back to what it really relates to. Your eyes can be related to anger. Your ears are water element. If you spin around how you get dizzy, that's because water is inside your ears, and that ties into kidney and bladder. And on and on. So without any senses, without being a wave, you're not experiencing individuality. Does that make sense? Okay? And something that's come to me recently, how many times you get like these ahas, you have another one, and you kind of sometimes lose track of what you had before. Sometimes what us metaphysical people tend to do is we kind of piss upon the gift that we were given. Actually, our individual life is a gift, because without it, we'd just be merged back with everything. So the individual life we have is the awesome ability to experience life as a separate entity when there really is no separation. So the cool thing about life is you get to play and feel and experience as an individual when in reality there is no individuality. So sometimes we get so caught up in destroying all of this as opposed to enhancing all of this. Because to me, you're born with a purpose, you enhance that. You don't destroy who you are. Like I'm going to take away everything I feel and I'm going to be Vulcan. And, to me that kills the very spirit of what you're here to do. And if you, in what happens, when I've done that in my past, I went through one phase in my life where I was into Buddhism, where I got rid of just about everything. I was sleeping like on a mat on the floor. I kind of went to that extreme where you try to do without everything, that Buddhist belief. And what happened is I just kind of started becoming more and more disinterested in life. And to me, that doesn't make sense. If we're here to if we're just to come into life to become disinterested with it, then what the hell use is it all? It's just like a silly mind game. It's not that at all. There's a balance of both. So your 5 senses are needed, and at the same time, they are what separate you. Another crazy little visual that comes into mind, there's a Queen's Right song. There's a pretty powerful video. It's from a movie, Johnny's Got a Gun, I think it was. It was about World War II, I think it was, and this guy gets wounded where he's blinded, he can't hear, he can't feel anything because he's had some neurological thing happen to him. And it's a pretty extreme movie. It's all about the violence of war. It's trying to make you see how bad that is. Anyway, basically this guy's a vegetable except he can think. But he has no sight, he has no hearing, he has no touch. He has no interaction with the world except his thinking. And it's a pretty powerful movie. Anyway, let's go on with that. Now that you're here on the planet, you are taught by the local natives, your parents, teachers, society, how to behave in order to fit in. And this is the beginning of your downfall. Here, this is what you do here. Watch all of us that have already screwed it up. They feed
the mold that your way is supposed to take.
Yeah, exactly. Mold. Yeah. They feed you false fruit, ignorance, from the tree of knowledge, the same fruit from the same tree they were fed. This is the beginning of your fall from a graceful existence. Feeding from this tree feed from this tree, and it strengthens your false feelings of separateness. The fruit also fuels the you versus me machine, an existence where unity is replaced with the mindset of you judge me and I'll judge you. So in this tree, I'm trying to represent yin and yang, the dark and the light. And in the Bible, Genesis, they talk about the tree of knowledge of good and bad. Period, what that means is the tree of judgment. So when you eat from this tree, once you begin to take on judgment, that's when you begin to lose or you fall from grace. As soon as you start judging yourself or another, you're out of grace. And God didn't kick us out of the Garden of Eden because we're in the Garden of Eden. It's the entire planet. We never got kicked out. It's our perceptions that let us not be able to see it. And if the blinds are taking off our eyes, we can see that we're actually living in paradise. And it could be paradise again. As a result of eating from the tree of judgment, which basically means as soon as you take on judgments of other people as your own, you're done. You're kicked out of the garden. You were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. You're not thrown out of the garden because you were bad, but because your newfound judgments cloud your ability to see the beauty of the garden. That's a bad place to be, since the Garden of Eden is not a place on the earth, but the entire earth herself. You, a complex group of mathematical equations. So we have numerology, your full name and date of birth. It's amazing if you've ever played with that, just how accurate that stuff can be. Astrology, another one, and there's tons of different types of astrology, American, Chinese, Vedic, and there's even more. There's your genetic code. Once they start knowing about that and really knowing how to look at that, they might even find even more metaphysical aspects there. You've got your mother and your father's DNA mix. You've got the elements, fire, earth, metal, water, wood. We've all got a different blend there. Culture, wherever you're born, is a huge impact on your life. It's your environment that you're born into. It's funny how things all kind of correlate together, but I was just talking not too long ago about the soil that you're raised in, and that's your environment. So I was born on Earth. I was born as American, Texas, Caucasian, middle class. That's going to be a huge, huge amount of how my life is shaped, right? If I was born Hindu somewhere else, that's going to change everything. If I unfortunately was born into a KKK family, I'm going to be born right into that programming. So right from the get-go, my environment has done most of my program writing for me right there. And if there's a lot of religious belief systems about other people and this people, they did this bad and on, you get that programming. Only when you become conscious can you undo it. All these aspects come together to make you who you are, your personality. You're given strengths and weaknesses that will help you accomplish your purpose. Your purpose is found in all these aspects that are woven together to form your personality. Your personality is your purpose. If you try to take your personality away from who you are, you kill your purpose. Just like I said when I did the whole thing where I went way too Buddhist and I was getting rid of everything. If you get rid of way too much, you lose what you're here to do, which leaves not much but to leave. There's nothing. If your job is done, then it's time to go. That type of thing. So don't kill your personality. What we're doing in these sessions when we're coming together, it's not about getting rid of you. It's about enhancing you. Have you figured that out yet? It's like getting rid of all the crap that you've taken on till you can really be 100% of who you were born to be. And very few people are walking around like that. As you go through life, the judgments you have interfere with your ability to simply live by going with the flow. This is on page 35. These judgments are like scratches on the lens through which you perceive life. You and your perception. So the lens that you live life through are your five senses. It's what you see, it's what you hear, it's what you taste. Those are the senses, right? If you took all those away, would you be perceiving reality? These are the kind of mind trips I do myself. If I had no senses, I would not be able to pick up this reality. I would not be on this station. Maybe I needed another form to be in a different, I think each form, like the physical body, has some attributes, just like a dog has different attributes. It's like it tunes you into a certain reality. So without your senses, without your perception, you cannot be a part of this world. So what happens is judgments begin to scratch the lenses that you perceive reality through. So if you got hit, since people were talking about sexuality in that book, 50 Shades of Grey, here's a programming. There's lots of programming around sexuality. So let's say a little boy, a baby boy is like exploring and touching itself, and the mother has these strong belief systems and slaps the baby's hand and says no. That's already a scar on the sense of touch and the sense of pleasure. So whenever that child goes to think about pleasure related to the sensual touch, there's a negativity applied to it. Does that make sense? And that negativity will go through entire life. Especially the more an emotional type of, like an embarrassment or something like that happens, the stronger that gets stuck in there. So these scratches interfere with our ability to perceive clearly. And we've all got tons of scratches. Things we've seen before, things we've heard before, things on our body that we've experienced. Your judgments are mostly misperceptions you have about reality. And why do we have misperceptions, mostly? Especially starting out small. Are they ours, or are they from other people? It's what we were taught. Most misperceptions you have are negative. And we're talking, we also have positive misperceptions, but the ones we want to get rid of are the negative. They are like monsters that haunt you. And you can see by this page that I've slowly made the monster get bigger on purpose, because here it says they are like, so these are misperceptions you have, right? Misperceptions over time become bigger, a bigger monster, and your misperceptions become beliefs. And then those beliefs can get even bigger because they become expectations. For example, a belief would be, let's go back to a misperception. Mommy was never there, she didn't breastfeed me, she didn't give me the nurturing I needed. That begins to start a misperception about the female. Again, some belief systems get built up like that. All females are stingy and hurt me. I'm stretching there. But then what happens is it becomes an expectation, and it's bigger because that's what you start bringing into your life, since we are creating it, right? So just as your judgments, misperceptions, beliefs, and expectations haunt you, you begin to become unnatural. You begin to censor your actions according to your beliefs. Sometimes you will act so others will like you to ensure your survival. At other times you will avoid situations altogether according to your expectations. Both of these actions are based in fear and unfortunately lead you to losing touch with your purpose for being. Your purpose for being is unique to you, and it demands that you be true to yourself. You can't be true to yourself when you're busy reacting to your judgments, misperceptions, beliefs, and expectations. And it's perfectly built up to where you can be manipulated the wrong way, because we, taking from just the basic needs, we want to be accepted, we want to be fed, we want to be loved, right? And what happens is that when we trade who we are for those things that we think just come from outside of ourselves, instead of giving them to ourselves. So this is what it looks like. You got all these scratches on the lens. You're looking through the scratches. Your judgments, misperceptions, and beliefs, expectations dictate your experience of life. Your life can be heaven hell, or any one of the many combinations of both. So here you see this guy, he's looking through the lens, all these scratches and judgments. So as he's perceiving the world and projecting out into the world, there's some positive things that he hits, and it's like heavenly going and easy going. But then there's also sometimes he experiences pain and hell. Usually they're around the same things. One thing I wanted to get across here with this line of perception going out to this open door and missing it and going to hell is certain perceptions or beliefs or expectations we bought into can make us miss opportunities and doors because we have a belief system about that, right? On past situations. And if we let ourselves go by what we experienced in the past and not be open to what it is in the moment, that open door, we may totally miss it. We may not even be able to see that it's even there. So like you're in a horrible job and you're like wanting something better, and Spirit is telling you to do something, but you can't hear it because you have these scratches and scars on around this particular issue, and you can't hear the very thing the Spirit's saying is, just look to the left. There's your answer. It's going to be that simple sometimes.
That's something that I told my friend Leslie not too long ago. Because she was having some issues with getting things lined up in her life, and doors kept quote-unquote slamming in her face. And I said, well, don't stand there and expect the door to open back up. Look around and see if there's another door open.
Right.
And you learn, if you're completely aware and there's no scratches, when the door opens, you jump. Because you know that opportunity, sometimes the door doesn't open back up. Sometimes they do, or sometimes it's even a more cramped door, so you have to go through more obstacles to get through it. So, to be optimally living is you're right here in the moment. I'm not living in the past. And if a door opens, I'm ready to jump through it right now. I'm not going to think about it and wait about it. I'm not going to filter it through my past experiences that make me think way too long and the door's closed. It's gone. Because sometimes you miss something for your entire life, not just that part of your life.
Right.
So the healing has to be addressed on the misperceptions, beliefs, and expectations. It has to be cleaning the lenses through which we watch reality through, right? You can't change the world out there. We have to change our perceptions of it. Your body is a metaphor for your spirit. Illness, physical, mental, and emotional, reflects a block on a spiritual level. Healing, long-term anyway, is a result of cleaning the judgments, misperceptions, beliefs, and expectations from your mind. Just like this squeegee cleaning off this glass, cleaning out the perceptions. Was it the Doors song about, actually, I guess it was the song that they were founded on, Doors. It's all about perception, right? When the doors of perceptions are cleared or cleansed, something.
It's based on the Aldous Huxley book.
Yeah.
But it also went into what they did with the hallucinogenics and things. They were going through lots of doors, experiencing things. Love is the initiative catalyst for change and growth, which heals us. It is through our relationships that we find out who we truly are by unmasking our issue, as iron sharpens iron, Proverbs 27:17. So, like it or not, love is what directs us to actually heal ourselves. Because in a relationship, if you're drawn into a relationship, what is typically going to be there present in the relationship for you to be drawn into it? Let's go to this from a negative side. All right, let me.
All the things that you don't want to do.
Well, they put it in a way. What would draw a woman to get into an abusive relationship with a man?
Lust, need.
Why is she comfortable with it though?
Because she's experienced so
That's where she came from.
Because these scars and stuff are limiting her into that reality. So love is going to pull her into that relationship, and you think, why the hell would she love that? But that attraction pulls her into that relationship. Unfortunately, this is most of us, is we have to be beat. We have to be beat senseless sometimes to get past it. So we're drawn into this relationship, and then she'll experience all these horrible things, as we all do in different varying degrees. We experience the negative to push us in to say, I'm tired of this. I'm done with this. And when you're done with it, then it can change. Until then, you're stuck in there. And you go, why is that? I've had this experience where you see somebody in a horrible relationship, and you try to talk to them, they cannot hear it because they're in the middle of it. Sometimes they have to go to the extreme. And sometimes that extreme is not very, very fun for them, the families in general. Because what I'm saying here is a relationship is the catalyst to pull up the negativity so you can say, I'm done with it. which means you're usually done with the relationship. So love isn't necessarily what we think this altruistic. Love guides us into negative situations sometimes to burn off what is negative. So whatever you know, there's good and bad reasons we're drawn into a relationship. But for the most part, when you're not very conscious, then you're drawn into a relationship feeling it's love to burn off the negativity. And love takes a very different view from that point. Little sponges. And this is very, very true right here. This actually comes from Psychology 101. Little minds are sponges. From birth to age 6, we are like walking sponges, and there's a reason for this. We soak up everything around us as if it were gospel truth. That's the thing you got to get, is we soak up everything like it's real, like it's true, right? Because just like an animal out in nature, the animal has to learn from the mother quickly. You know, so as little bitty children ourselves, we are open, so open, because we need to be learning things quickly. If we had a conscious mind and we're like, I don't know, you know what I mean? It would not work. So our brains from 0 to 6 are so open and sponge-like, we take everything as in reality. And the bad thing about that these days is we're watching people, letting kids watching TV and all these other things. They're absorbing so much bullshit that they actually have more programming to undo than even we did just 20, 30, whatever, 40 years ago, right? It's a cumulative effect is getting worse and worse. And unless you have somebody conscious there to explain them very specifically that that's not real and that blah, blah, blah. But sometimes there's things that way too much input. So you're soaking up everything. These perceived truths, these viral programs, go directly into the makeup of who we are. And they play like records or tapes, 24/7, reinforcing who we are and what the world is all about. I refer to these perceived truths as false fruit or viral programs, just like, you know, Adam and Eve ate from the fruit, and then it's like, then they passed it on to their children, they passed it on, on and on. When we are children, we are fed this false fruit from our relative spiritual leaders, teachers, TV, and radio. When we eat, which basically means accept in this fruit, it becomes our truth. Not only do we get the false fruit from communication, we also get it from interpreting other people's actions or perceptions of life. In other words, most programming we get doesn't come from mommy saying you're stupid, which does happen unfortunately. A lot of the times we look at our parents' actions like, okay, this is the 10th time my mom said she was going to do this for me and she hasn't done it. We'll make up our own reality. And that tape will play with us throughout our life. So this is how it works. There's a little box on the right side of the sponge here. Childhood training, love received, morals, etc. We have life experiences, beliefs, expectations, mental emotional attitudes equals the health and life status we have. All that is the tip of the iceberg of us, our physical bodies now. In these tapes we have run 24/7. That's why affirmations sometimes can be a little difficult unless you've done some tapping to free it up. Because if in the back of your head you're saying something like, I've got a couple examples. You're stupid. Don't do that. You get on my nerves. If it weren't for you, my whole life would be great. The world is a dangerous place. In order to make it in the world, you have to really struggle to survive. Let's just take the world is a dangerous place, and you're saying some affirmation like, day by day in every way I'm getting better and better, or money is coming my way. It's like shooting a little BB gun at this huge giant that's running 24/7 in the back of your head. It's like you have to have enough energy to offset the building of that. It's like the scales. And grace comes in here. Grace can help clear a lot of things without having to go to the extremes, but you have to be aware of the tape. So grace only can step in most cases when you become aware of the pattern, and that's what all the negative situations are. If a girl is drawn into an abusive relationship, I would love to want to stop that, right? But that's my limited perception because she's got the program that she has to get rid of. I would love to wave my magic wand, but unfortunately that she may have to experience something to undo that for her. So that's what she's drawn into, to let that happen. And a lot of what I've been drawn into do and all the stuff that's led me to my studying, my personal ahas and things, come from wanting to keep people from having to do that thing. But sometimes, unfortunately, I've learned you can't necessarily stop them unless they're ready. Unless first there's an awareness. The awareness has to be there first. That's why I always say enlightenment is the first step. Enlightenment is not some end step where you're all of a sudden everything's perfect. No, enlightenment is, oh, I see why I'm doing that. Now I've got to take the action to change it. If I realize I'm in a negative relationship and it's hurting me because of blah, 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 it doesn't take that away until I do take the action. So enlightenment awareness has to be first, but then you've got to take action. And this is the thing about spiritual damage to yourself. Okay, if you don't know or you don't believe recycling is helpful for the planet, and you don't recycle, that's one thing. But if you know that you need to be recycling because the planet needs you to help and you're not doing it, you're causing soul damage. You see the slight difference? Mm-hmm. One is you're ignorant, okay, and one is you know but you're not doing it. If you know and you're not doing it, you are causing spiritual damage for yourself and typically for those around you. So, this is going to be kind of a short one. This is your homework, and we're going to do some tapping today. So I made some of these classes small so we could do this. So the homework for tonight is pick from last week's 5 elements consciousness sheet, one issue that you want to clear up. Does anybody have that sheet with them? Mm-hmm. Do you want to just read off one thing maybe that's on there? The one where it's like your fears. Yeah. It can be anything.
Under fire, below my list of things that make you sad.
Okay.
One thing that I listed was not living up to my own expectations.
Okay. So this is how you would use this sheet based on hers. You would write down the issue on that homework page here. Like, say that one more time, sorry, Tracy.
Not living up to my own expectations.
Okay. Like the issue is not living up to your own expectations. So you would daily tap on this one thing for the next week until next week's class. Making notes of what you tap on, because sometimes what's really interesting, and Tracy's kind of been having this recently with her third eye opening up anyway, is that when you tap on something and you're tapping, little things will pop into your head. That's when you need to write those down because those are like little bitty ahas, and if you keep a log of them, at the end of a week, if you're tapping on one issue, you'll have all these little cues that are giving you a bigger picture. And if you tap on it one day, then the next day, it's like each day you tap on it, you see a little more, and a little more, and a little more. And that's the enlightenment process. So if this is a dark room and there's a light in there, you can make out a little bit, and as the light gets brighter and brighter, eventually you see everything, and you can interact with everything. So just pick one thing from that sheet, and you tap on it, and it'd just be something like the concept of although, good Lord, I can't, sorry. What was yours again?
Living up to my ego.
Living up to my expectations. Although I'm not living up to my expectations fully, I accept myself. Something like that. Right. Anything along those. And what will happen is it'll morph. You'll get a better phrasing, or maybe even pull in mommy or daddy from the past, or this relation. It'll all kind of start melding in together. If you tap, so that's your homework. You tap on that, and then you keep notes on it. Okay? And keep on notes on how it changes because it's going to be important. It'll give you a deeper understanding of the issue. So, and the longer you tap on it, the more understanding comes.
Do you also want us to keep track of like the phrasing and stuff that we use? Or
Yeah. Any little note. You don't have to do all of it, but like if you're tapping all of a sudden you're tapping on sadness, and all of a sudden you get angry, you might want to make a note of that because you have the 5 elements, and they're related to different organs. But what really gets dangerous, liver and gallbladder handle anger, okay? But if anger is so full that it has to be shunted into another element, so if wood has to be shunted more into fire or over into earth, what happens is that's when you start getting disease, which gets into the realm of cancer. Because certain emotions are being pushed where they don't belong, and that causes problems. So it'd be like snowing in summer. That would fuck some shit up, as far as crops and things go, right? So, and this is related to the elements. So, when there's a strong emotion in the wrong element, it can cause that's the illness or disease, and you can help find out what it is, because that maybe if you got anger related to this issue, then it could be some of this liver gallbladder might be part of the problem too. So, any questions on that? I'm going to just read this, or just let y'all read it. I guess I'll read it. At least I'll hit the highlights here. This is on page 38. And usually I just have people read this as homework, but we'll just go ahead and read it here. In the space where you sit now, tons of different frequencies are flying through the air. Television, radio, country music, rock and roll, health, cancer, love, hate, joy, and the list goes on to infinity. In each moment, a myriad of frequencies, visual, mental, and sound waves are all around us. What makes you and I different is how we are tuned into the various frequencies. Usually this is done without our awareness, so we default to our subconscious thoughts. How do you control what you're receiving? The answer is you need to learn how to operate your mind and body. Your body-mind is a crystalline transmitter and receiver, basically a radio. In a nutshell, you tune your radio to a frequency that your antenna picks up, and presto, you have music. Same frequencies attract same frequencies. There are many facets to frequencies. Each frequency contains a sound, an emotion, a color, and a geometric shape. The radio components. There are 5 basic components of a radio. The frequency. This is the range of vibrations you live in. So, for example, on your car radio, I like to use it as an example because it works better for most people. You've got that dial and anywhere from like 88 point whatever to 107 point. That's your frequency spectrum, okay? The antenna, that's your body, your spine, your blood, your chakras. Your entire mind body is an antenna. The memory buttons, these are, remember the memory buttons on a car radio? Okay? These are preset belief perception buttons. So when you push one of those buttons, right, that person winds up on blah, blah, blah station, right? And have you heard that term, pushing somebody's buttons? So if I come up and I piss off Katie about a particular thing that happened in her past, she gets stuck on that station and she becomes the personality of that station, which in most cases really isn't who she is. It's just going off an old program. Does that make sense? This is where your thoughts generally stay. These have been pre-programmed by society at large. These are the preset forms you're comfortable with or have not yet refined. In other words, you're either used to them or you're not aware that they're even being played. These are buttons people push and set us off. And we have hundreds of them. It's not like your car radio, we have 6 or we have like hundreds. And like mommy, she'll say something, how they push the button and it sets it. So we have all these things pre-programmed on us. The scan button, this is what most people do. The scan button, this is what the unaware mind does. It aimlessly wanders open to broadcasting and receiving any suggestion. When in the scan mode, the mind is open to all frequencies, waves, whether they serve us appropriately or inappropriately. It pays to be aware of what station you are on and what you are wanting to be on. So, like when you hit the scan button in your car, it goes, plays the station, and we tend to let that default all the time. We'll go through our days not even tuning into what we want. But the master switch, which is the tuner dial, we get to take control and tune it to what we want to and then preset what we want. We start undoing what we've been programmed to do. And that's the steps to mastery. Your mind is the master control. With it, you choose where you place your thoughts and feelings. So that tuner dial, you have to be consciously aware that you're on a station you don't like, and then you say, no, I want to be on this station, and you set the buttons. On page 39, there's kind of a cheap representation of a radio that I drew here. So it just shows the scan button, everything I pretty much covered. The antenna, which is the physical body. We covered that a couple of weeks ago, how the antenna on top of your house, the old antennas actually looks like the spinal cord and the rib cage. So let's skip this page for the most part. Frequencies and ranges. Not only do we live in certain frequency ranges, but we ourselves are a set of frequency ranges. Everything in this universe or any other universe is or has a frequency or a wave of energy. Here on Earth, we are tuned to a human earthly frequency, which is huge and nested in a solar system frequency range, further nested in an even larger frequency range, and so on and so on. So it's almost like these nested Russian dolls, okay? Here's the universe. I open up the universe. Oh, here's our solar system. Open up the solar system. There's planet Earth, and then there's our human. So we're all nested in all these frequencies. And I tried to depict that down here. We have the universe, then the galaxy, the solar system, Earth, and human, right? The human is the same way. It's you, your body, your organ systems, your heart and lungs are all that fractal too, because you are a microcosm. You basically are an entire universe yourself. Even inside your body, you have light. If you were to like hop inside your body, there's photons that emit light inside your. It probably looks like a universe inside there, right? And like the heart is like its own galaxy. So to me, it'd be like amazing to be inside the body. So there's all these things happening within us. And I used to have this huge poster, but I got tired of kind of carrying it around. But you can see on this upper picture here, huge variety of frequencies. There's radio frequencies, light frequencies, all here. What part are we aware of? This thin, thin, thin sliver that we visibly see. The entire other part of that, we're blind to, which goes a lot back to what Marcia was talking about last time on Thursday about how, the unaware part that you're unaware, there's more that you're unaware of than typically what you are aware of, especially when you're filtering a lot of stuff. Does that make sense what I said there? So we're tuning into all these things all the time. So when we tune into it, somebody pushes our button, it's like that, our mind, our body, our organ, whatever that relates to, all gets tuned to that station. And it starts to affect us, especially the longer it stays on that station. All of you have seen the lighted window with numbers on a radio dial, right? Well, this is a frequency range. The radio will only pick up what is within the set frequency range that the radio has made up, right? You can't tune into radio station 301 because it's not on your dial, right? You can only tune into what's on your dial. Like a radio, we also have a certain frequency range. Anything that falls within our frequency range is human. Anything that falls outside of the frequency range is not. For example, a dog is still within the larger Earth frequency, yet it's outside of the human frequency. Does that make sense? So it's like, here's Earth, and here's a human, here's a dog. We all fit in within that, but we're not necessarily the same that way. Angels, aliens, and other universes are examples of frequencies outside of the Earth frequency. That's why they appear that way. They appear alien to us because they're outside of our frequency until we see them. We go, ooh, that's weird, because we're unaware of it at that time. But it doesn't mean that they don't exist. We're just not exactly on the same station. And the cool thing about playing with psychic abilities and energies and psi, K, and things like that is you're stretching that little small, here's that frequency, and we got a small. When you're playing with that, you're expanding yourself more into that spectrum, and you'll begin to see things and be aware of things that are there, but you typically don't see with your human eyes. Does that make sense? So as you play with that, you can tune into anything if you play with it. But you got to be able to play with it and be consciously aware of something. Others outside our frequency look different because they are tuned to vibrate to a different frequency. Let's say you were a liver cell and you bumped into a kidney cell. The kidney cell would be foreign or alien to you, even though you were in the same body. Does that make it more sense? It would look totally different to each other, but yet they're of the same body, right? They're really related. The kidney cell would be foreign. I already said that. No, I didn't. The kidney cell would be foreign, alien to you, even though you are of the same body. I look at it this way. I am the God of my body, about 1 trillion cells. It is my responsibility to protect, nurture, and help all these points of consciousness to grow and flourish. And they support me too. It's a symbiotic relationship. Actually, we are very small in the overall picture. Not small as insignificant, just small in size. We are in the Milky Way galaxy, which has about 100 million stars. Our galaxy belongs to a cluster of galaxies called the Local Group, which is part of the Virgo supercluster covering 1 million light years of space. To quote from the movie Contact, if we're the only ones, there is a lot of wasted space. Our radios, our bodies are not attuned to what is outside the set of human earthly experiences. All people through natural born gifts or practice can access or tune into these different frequencies. So like a Reiki attunement, bless you. A Reiki attunement is tuning you to that Reiki spectrum. It's out there, you just got to be aware of it to channel it. Example of this are tarot card readers, trance dancers, a psychic mom, some types of healing. We are attuned to the visible light spectrum. Even though there is much more here in our space, we can only perceive visible light. Visible light is but a small fraction of what is here on Earth. With man-made devices like the EKG, we can expand our knowing to encompass or access information from other frequencies. Our technology is an outward expression of inward abilities, and the truth is you have in your body everything you need to perceive what is in the all that is. So if you practice, you can perceive anything, you can pick up anything. The devices are just something I can use outside of myself, but really sometimes we get so dependent on devices that we start to lose our own abilities, or we don't develop our own abilities because we're letting a device do it for us. That's why in my practice, I've had lots of little toys I've gotten before and done this and done that, but something in my head always says, you want to stay away from that as best you can, because the more you play with something outside of yourself, you're not empowering yourself, you're empowering that tool you're using. And sometimes you'll get so dependent on that tool that if you lost the tool or you didn't have it, you don't have the ability to do it, which is crap, because all that is a representation of what's already inside of you. Side note here, astrology is a study of the imprinting of the frequencies or the magnetics of the planet on your body. So as soon as you come out of the womb, that's why they consider that your birth, because you're inside your mother, right? As soon as you come out of the womb, you are no longer shielded in your mother's auric field. You are separate from that, and that's when you're imprinted with your astrology. It's called your natal chart. As soon as you come out, that's when, because before you were shielded by your mother's field. This imprint is like a stamp, I've already covered this, or a UPC, Universal Personality Code. It contains what you are to accomplish here for yourself and the whole, or rather the possibilities of what you can do. There is free will after all. In other words, sometimes you may not do what you were necessarily intended to do because you got to let yourself get sidetracked. So, to me, and this pisses some people off, or flies in some people's face, nothing is predestined completely. There are predestined possibilities for you, but how you do them all is not predestined. And to be honest, we can get off track. If that was not true, nobody ever gets sick or ill. If we all stayed on track, right? So we can miss things. We can miss that door and regret it. And maybe that was really important. But the idea is if you come back to yourself and you get so in tune with yourself, you don't miss that. And we let ourselves get distracted and spread out everywhere, and we're beginning to miss so much that we need to start bringing back in to ourselves in reality. When it comes to frequencies, though, lower frequencies can be just as healing, if not more so, than higher frequencies. In the New Age movement, some people are obsessed with vibrating high or ascending, that they lose their balance. Remember, as above, so below. The lower chakras need to be developed as much as the upper chakras to be balanced. It's so funny, I wrote this 4 or 5 years ago, and this year I've been focusing on that last line there, on my lower chakras. Antenna. Your body comes together to make an electromagnetic antenna. You are a crystalline structure on one level. That is why we have the colored chakras. It's like light that gets fragmented and comes through. So the light's coming in somewhere, but we separate it. That unity is where it's all one thing. That one white light gets fragmented into different aspects. That is why we have the colored chakras. It is like the sun going through a prism. The light's different rays of energy are broken into specific or separate colors. Your thoughts and emotions shape your physical body. So by changing your emotions and thoughts, you change your physical body, which changes what you broadcast outwardly. So if you change your mental emotional patterns, you change what you're actually broadcasting out and what comes back to you. But if you're letting those preset buttons run you, that means whatever you're broadcasting out will come back to you. You may not want it. You see what I'm saying? So the master, the self-mastery is you know what you want and you start tuning to it and you don't let anybody else change that station. One animation that I would love to have is, actually entertaining the idea of paying someone to do it, is like an actual animation that's moving. But like somebody's driving in their car and they pick the station they like, and then it's like, then somebody pushes another button. You know how you're driving and people tend to like to listen to certain music, and somebody else pushes a button and they don't like the music, so they push it back to that. And then over time, it's like all of a sudden you see there's like 100 people in the car and they're all trying to push these different buttons for this one person trying to drive where they want to go and do what they want to do. And that's basically how life is everybody's trying to change your freaking station. Master says, no, I have this station, this is my thought, I'm going to keep it. That goes back to that little Facebook post I did not too long ago. It's one thing to be aware of what needs to be changed, and it's another to really be able to hold that station. Because you have lots of people trying to change it on a daily basis.
Yeah, that expression on
Yeah, that's exactly it. Okay. Likewise, as you change your physical body with exercise or diet, you change your emotional mental states. Like simply breathing exercises will change your state in no time. Exercising daily changes your perception. Anything you do, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, in a positive way can have a positive effect on all three spectrums.
I'm sorry, that's kind of interesting because all of this stuff that with my meditations and how deep I seem to be going with the meditation has all started since I've started walking every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely a connection there.
Yeah, and think about when you're walking, you're moving blood, you're doing this, all this chi is moving more than typically. And why you see elderly people begin to decline and age really quick. And the one reason is once they get to a certain age, they were pre-programmed, boom! All these, certain generation was, everybody got pushed with this button. Once you turn this age, this happens. This ability is gone. Boom, program is another tape. Then this happens, and then they start doing is all they do is they don't use their mind, they don't use their bodies as much, and they start to age, not because that's what the body was supposed to do, it's because they let themselves be programmed that way, and they enforce it because they're not moving the chi, they're not activating their brain and using it, and building neural pathways, they're letting it all just kind of, and that's it, and that's what their bodies look like. The life force gets sucked out. Every 5 to 7 years, all the cells in your body are replaced. And I've even heard recently that it's 2 years. It depends on what source you listen to. So between 2 and 7 years, you have completely new cells. That means every 7 years you have a new body. Every 7 years you have the potential to create a new healthy body. So why does it not change? Because your thoughts and feelings are the same. Change your emotions and your mental attention and you will change the patterns in your body. Your thoughts actually change the geometric shape of your body. You can read the mental and emotional state of a person by the shape of their body. And we all know this unconsciously. Maybe some of us know consciously, but if something like a posture like this, is that giving it a message? Or a posture like this? So we're shaping our body based on our mental emotional, right? We can't help but project exactly how we're feeling inside. And if I hold my body this way for a very long time, if I've got a lot of fear or something, remember that whole talk about the spinal cord being your breaker box? If I'm sitting a certain way or holding my posture, I'm letting certain vertebrae and muscles become tight and others become loose, which means that particular feeding, that particular organ gets cut off, and I get a disease because my mind is holding me a certain way. That's as simple as it works right there. So our emotions and mental states shape everything. And sometimes you can just change, like, what's that term for handwriting and reading someone's handwriting? Graphology. So anyway, don't need to know the name specifically, but it's when you read your personality by your handwriting. You can purposely, once like if you read one of those books and you want to have a certain mindset and somebody says, that's bad, 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 you can purposely start writing that way and start changing your mental emotional pattern. So any little thing you do will have a positive result if your focus is a positive change. But you got to be aware of it.
The interesting thing about that is I would say that goes just not just like body size and body shape, but literally physical attributes.
Oh yeah, totally.
I'm one of those people. If you look at my childhood photos
Mm-hmm.
and my junior high photos and my high school photos, they look like almost completely different people.
Yeah.
And that's just I would attribute it to a certain mental state being different during each of those periods.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see that too, just thinking about that with different people. Mm-hmm.
Like I look different now than I did 10 years ago.
Yeah. Constant changing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do mental emotional states affect the body? In many ways. The skeletal system of your body is a good place to start. The spine is like the mineral kingdom of your body, and minerals conduct electricity. If you look at a skeleton with outstretched arms, it looks like an antenna. A subluxation, which is a misalignment in the spinal column, is an example of the mind-body relationship. Yes, subluxation can be caused by a physical accident, but I think our thoughts, for the most part, cause so-called accidents. Most subluxations are caused when we try to tune something out.
Is that a blown disc?
Huh? Yeah, it means when the disc has gone left or right. It just means it's out. It's not like a torn disc or rupture. It just means it's out of alignment. which means certain nerves are being pinched and
Right.
certain things are being accentuated and some things are being turned off. It is like me taking my subluxations are caused when we are trying to tune something in or out. Usually it's something we deem negative. It's like me taking my TV antenna and bending one of the brackets because I did not want to see a certain channel. So if I'm sitting here in a fearful way, I'm trying to make up something. If I'm sitting here, I have this posture a lot of the time, I'm going to be pulling certain things out of place. And by pulling certain things out of place, I'm going to be putting too much pressure and energy on certain organs and depriving organs on the other spectrum. And when you do that for a long period of time, we look at it as a disease, but the disease came from the mind and body that made the body do like this. We cannot help from posture, from emotions. If somebody scares the crap out of you, you don't just go, ah! No, you do the posture, right? Ah! No, you do the whole posture. The posturing to me is like the wave that comes out from the mental emotional. If I move, that's the wave. But if I allow an emotion to stay with me for a long time, I'm freezing that wave. Okay? And the longer I freeze a wave, it becomes material. Because remember, quantum physics, you have a wave, okay, and a particle. They're both the same thing. But if I observe this a particular way, it will manifest in a very specific way. So if I hold a wave, so if I get scared and I'm holding my posture in a weird way, and sometimes it's very, very subtle. If I'm holding my shoulders high because I expect to be hit by my dad that used to hit me, if I'm holding my shoulders this way, I'm frozen the wave. I've frozen the emotions that need to be moving. And once you freeze them long enough, it's going to physically begin to become a problem. It's going to materialize in the particle reality. These subluxations lead to physical problems, disease, because the nerves which are pinched by the subluxation cause malfunctions and degeneration of the area fed by certain nerves. This is just one example. The effects of negative emotions and mental states on the body is unlimited. A few examples are colon problems. When we have problems releasing, so example, if you have problems letting go of the past, we can have colon issues because the colon is a representation of that, which is your lower back nerves. Leg problems, not being able to move forward. Worry, leading to overall fatigue related to the adrenals and everything else. The list goes on and on. The mental emotional states affect your heart rate, which affect how your DNA braids or tightens the strands. And Greg Braden gets into quite a bit of information on this. The DNA gives your RNA. RNA copies the DNA and tells. So it's basically you have your mind is like the contractor. You're like saying, I want to build this. Okay. Your DNA is like the subcontractor that's out there with the blueprints at the work site, and he's telling the RNA what patterns he wants, which tell the workers what to do. And the workers are using what? The material, right? The wood, the shingles, the nails. The wood, the shingles, the nails are what we eat. Okay? The contractor, the one that's in charge of building the thing, is our consciousness. And the thing about it is, if you're holding a particular mind state all the time, you're telling your body to build that. You're telling, hey, I'm afraid of life. Well, I'm going to build you a body that reflects that. And we're doing that, literally. So the DNA contains a recipe for creating the various types of proteins required for the organism. It constitutes the genes themselves. RNA is a messenger that governs the structure and function of the organism and its components. What I just said before is an easier explanation of this. So, your DNA contains all the codes for health and disease. You consciously or subconsciously choose, hopefully consciously, what you want by weaving of your heartbeat, which is affected by your emotions and mental state. If your emotional state holds the braid of the DNA in an unhealthy pattern, all types of illness can be activated and built within the body. Okay, just 2 more pages. Memory buttons. We've all heard the expression, he or she is pushing my buttons. Memory buttons are set frequencies. These set frequencies are where you find your emotions and mental states most of the time. So if you find patterns within your life, these are, I guarantee, preset buttons, whether you set them, your parents, your preachers, teachers, whatever. These are preset buttons. It's like when you get in your car, you've got a set of stations that you typically listen to. These stations are the ones that you've been programmed to and are used to. Unfortunately, sometimes they're negative. These set frequencies are where you find your emotions most of the time. On a typical radio, you have 5 memory buttons, but our mind bodies have hundreds. The fewer buttons you have, the better you are emotionally and physically. So ideally, like a Buddha, there are no buttons to push. They're completely clear of those. There's nothing to push. You can come over.
Master dial.
Yeah. These buttons can be positive or negative, but for most of the population, they are negative. These buttons are not bad. These buttons are not as bad as the scan button, which I talked about earlier, but usually carry more of a charge because they are long-standing patterns. As a child, your family picks these stations for you and presets your memory buttons. When you get older, it becomes your responsibility, no one else's, to reprogram these set frequencies for your benefit. The Earth realm is doing just that, training you to create responsibility. On Earth, you can see the results of your creation or choices. That's part of the whole negative experiences. It shows you something underneath. And any negative experience is trying to show you what's underneath that because you're creating it. As you start questioning, you are drawn to change your accepted consciousness and unconscious beliefs, which is really the cool, freeing part. Because it would suck if all that we could do is be aware of it and then be trapped in it. That's like the old religious thing. Is like, God meant you to have cancer and you're supposed to die of cancer. Well, that sucks. Excuse me, but surely God has to be smarter than me, okay? And that is not smarter than me, okay? I can see that the negative experience is supposed to draw you to an awareness that can actually heal that, not just to draw you to be aware of it and then suffer through it. That's crazy. I don't care what anybody says. So, let me go back. Get off my soapbox. On Earth, you can see the results of your creation choice. Just like the woman going into the abusive relationship, she's going to damn sure see the result of what's in her mind, right? Hopefully she can see that mirror, that echo, is drawing her to see what's causing that so she can change it. Because that's the idea of it. As you start questioning, you are drawn to change your accepted consciousness and unconscious beliefs. By changing these emotions and mental states, you reprogram your memory buttons and begin to change your behavior and your life. When your buttons get pushed, usually by others who are unaware they are doing so, because most times people are innocently pushing your buttons, they don't mean to, but it can't be helped because you're drawing it to you. So you might overreact to a small situation because the small situation pushed a past memory button that previously tuned your energy into all kinds of negative poop. So, here's an example of you having a charge or a button on something. Say something little small happens and somebody pushes that button and you go into rage. That tells you it's old, because if the reaction to whatever the situation is too big, it means it's a bunch of old crap, like a powder keg that somebody just set off. And that means if you have a reaction like that, extreme reactions, you've got to start paying attention to, because those are telling you where you're stuck, what keg you're setting on top of. For example, let's say one of the buttons you may be, let's say, I get so excited to read too fast. Let's say one of your buttons may be a lack of self-worth. One day a friend of yours does something that caused that button to be pushed, and you go gaga, which usually leads to something like anger, high blood pressure, nervousness, anxiety, or an upset stomach. You will stay in that negative mode until you can tune into a better station. So what happens is it's like somebody driving along, somebody reaches over and changes the station. You don't like the station, but you don't have the wherewithal to go, oh, I can change that to where I want it to. So we let it be there. And then usually something comes along to change it for us. The example I used to use is some girls, these 2 young girls, let's say they're mid-20s, and they're driving along, they're really good friends, and one girl's really feeling comfortable. She really doesn't sing in front of the other friend, but she's feeling comfortable this day and feeling open and expanded and happy. So she starts singing, and her friend chuckles a little bit. Okay? And that girl all of a sudden gets quiet, and the rest of the day she's steaming and seething inside. And unbeknownst to her friend, and she's like, what did I do? Nothing. Because she pushed off this button, which goes back to a child when she would be singing and playing and having fun as a 4-year-old, and her dad would come home pissed off from work and slam the door and tell her to shut up because she was making an ugly noise. Well, that girl just validated what the father had told her, right? Yeah. And that's how we live life for the most part. We do that same bullshit. You can see the importance of changing the negative preset buttons because of how it affects your health. The scan button, I've already mentioned this 3 times. This is the button the average person this is the button The average half-asleep sheep usually is used daily. When this button is used, your consciousness is allowed to willy-vanilly scan the environment and let in whatever is playing out there, good or bad. Yeah, I was playing a little bit. I meant to. It was a play on that, and I
do lip sync in there.
I goofed up. Okay.
Bad hair.
That's what they did too. That's why they did not.
So this is the last page here, and then we'll get to some tapping. The tuner dial. This is the master dial. The tuner dial is the master switch, or master switch. As you take more responsibility for yourself, you begin to naturally retune yourself using this dial. When you change your thoughts, you change your station, your world, literally. Your mentality and emotions, like your thumbs and forefingers, control the switch. The key to changing the harmony is staying aware. So it's like your mental and emotional. You got to have both of those to hold the switch, right? You typically can't use one finger to hold a switch, right? It takes both your mind and your emotions. Thought is the director, the ruler of energy. Energy is the ultimate source of thought, but energy follows and obeys thought. Our thoughts and habits manifest in our bodies. When we master our thoughts, we master a result. That is powerful. So as we begin to master certain things, we begin to master our own body. Just like you need to be eating right, it's only when you start taking a hold of the switch and start eating right that your body starts changing. Not just you wishing upon it like, I really hate 92.9, I wish the station was changed. Well, it's not going to change until you actually do the physical action of changing it. The mind tunes and the emotions lock the station in place. The emotions are key here because the strong emotions are what hold a particular station once you've gotten there. So if you get to a blissful place and you let somebody piss you off, or you're letting them change your station. Your emotions are the thing of locking it in. So you got to be really guard. It gets to where you guard your mind and emotions. You pick more. You're more picky with what you watch. You're more picky with what you listen to. More picky with who you hang around with. You're more picky, And you think you would be open to everything. No, a master's not an idiot. Doesn't let everything in. No, they're very picky about what they let in and very specific because everything affects you. Affirmations and meditation are two of the main tools available, and which really help with the master because you can get a hold of your mind. And now energy medicine. They help us consciously tune into what we want and tune out what we do not want. If you do want to listen to country music, change the station. If you do not like disease, tune to health. Sounds too simple? Well, it is. Jesus said, go and sin no more. If you do not like what you're experiencing, don't keep doing the same damn thing. The most mentally, emotionally healing and uplifting vibrational frequencies is unconditional love. Love is confusing to most because we have been erroneously taught that love includes jealousy and control. This, however, is far from the truth because we're even taught that God is that. God is all loving. He's jealous. He's gonna punish us. That is crazy. That's the human mind projecting onto God what God is. God cannot be that. That's not love. That's not unconditional love. This, however, is as far from the truth as one can get. Unconditional love is honoring and accepting another just the way they are, no strings attached. Now, I'm going to mention in a little clause here, unless they're doing harm to yourself or someone else, then there's a certain aspect that you need to step into that. Not like, oh, I love that person, I'm going to allow them abuse that child. Well, that doesn't make sense, of course, but anyway, just be aware. You love and accept them, because this makes me think of a story about a samurai warrior whose master was killed, and he went on a search to kill the opposing samurai that killed his master. And it was a long story, but it comes down to that the samurai finally found the one that had killed his master. And the samurai that he was about to kill said something that angered the guy that was going to revenge his master. And he could not kill him because he was killing from a place of anger. So it's like when things happen or when you're drawn to change things, you can't come from an angry space of doing it. You let the anger drive you to the right action. So it's not about being in this negative state to change something. So in other words, if you see something bad happening, you let the anger push you into taking the right action. not like attacking someone. You make the right thing. And if you let your anger take over, then you can sometimes cause more damage than good. Because sometimes you gotta step lightly, especially if, like, say, if it's a child being abused. You can't just jump in there like an idiot. You got to use your emotions to guide you into the appropriate action.
What's the difference between justice and revenge?
Yeah, there is a big difference, Batman. Unconditionally, love is and what's interesting about Batman is the dark night of the soul. Or you call him the Dark Knight, right? So the Batman is that collective consciousness of the dark night of the soul being wronged and everything happening from that. Unconditional love is the holy grail, the heartbeat of compassion and acceptance. It is the cup that never empties. And it's the holy grail, it's that heart center, right? It never empties. It doesn't need to be emptied. So if you're pouring out love to someone and you feel like you're not getting love back, that's because you're using the human aspect of that, not the unconditional loving. And that gets tricky because I've contemplated this myself quite a bit. But the aspect of being these individual pieces that come into a reality where everything's the same, you still need your individual needs, right? And an intimate relationship, you go in with certain things that you need and expectations. So it's funny that an intimate relationship is supposed to be the deepest relationship, but sometimes you can lose your divinity in it because you do need a certain amount of things. In other words, the reason you go into an intimate relationship can sometimes kill what unity is about. Because if you're drawn to that person because there's sexual attraction or this and I want this, that's a separation of, because it makes them, that person, it makes them more special and set aside. Therefore, there's already separation from that. It's a tricky little thing to walk. When you love someone unconditionally, which is harder to do when it's intimate, right? I've heard this before. It's like, let's say you're going to meet your friend for dinner, right? It's 9 o'clock, and they're like 30 minutes late, and they come and go, oh, no big deal. Okay, now, if it's somebody more intimate, especially if you're just now starting to date them or something, and they're like, where are they? And they get here at 30 minutes later, you're usually pissed. Or you may not say that, but inside you're like, oh my God, they've even sat here. So we take it more personal when it's intimate, when it should be the opposite, since that's supposed to be that unity. But this is the way the human mind works. When you love someone unconditionally, you want what is best for them, which is very hard when it's an intimate relationship, even if it does not involve you, which means sometimes in a relationship, what's best for someone is for them not to be with you anymore. Not that you're bad, but whatever was there that y'all needed or was done with is done. And to stay in that relationship or hold on to that person not only causes that person harm, but it causes you harm.
We have that built-in program that says when you love somebody, you're supposed to love them for the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
Or you're supposed to be in that relationship for the rest of your life, no matter what.
And they say there's two terms that will never are able to be fulfilled is forever and never. It's impossible. I'm never going to, whatever. That's impossible to completely state. And I will love you forever. That's impossible to even back up, because love changes all the time. Yet we want that in stone, just like you're saying. So we're like, could you sign this contract with your blood, please? And if you don't, my next life you will be my slave. That's when you try to control another, you are using control for your personal gain, not theirs. And this is the thing about relationships, is what happens is once somebody, let's say that they've grown and you've grown past a certain point, but you're still caught up into them, like what happens is you start trying to control them so they stay in the relationship and you stay in the relationship, but really all you're doing is you're fucking chaining yourself up, not the other person. You're actually better for you to move on. But the ego's like, oh, it's scary. The spirit's like, move on, dumbass, because you're done here. You cause more problems than you do good. We are free spirits, and God, all that is, gave us free will. That is why the concept of God punishing us is so foreign to me. Oh, here you go. Here's free will. But if you make the wrong choice, I'm going to burn you in hell.
I smite you.
Yeah. Sometimes you wonder if, and I was raised Baptist, but sometimes I wonder if extreme religious people, if logic is something that has to be taken out to be that way, because that right there logically does not match. Here's free will, but don't make the wrong choice, or I'm going to burn you in hell forever. Forever.
That mentality actually turns off the part of the brain.
I'm sure it does.
The hippocampus, it causes it to just shut down.
Interesting.
But there's also
Because
that,
because you've got that duality of,
Mhm.
of I'm supposed to do this, my brain and my spirit and all this is telling me to do this, but my religion is telling me that if I do that, then I'm going to go to hell.
Well, see, and that's what they call the dualistic, polarized mind. You're not even yourself anymore because you're listening to all these different voices that you've adapted that used to be out there, but now they're inside of you. So what appears to be wrath of God is really God allowing you all your creations. So God never punishes us. He allows us to go through what we create for ourselves, which sometimes looks like punishment, but we've got ourselves into it. All right, that ends that. Actually, went a little longer than I want. We had a little time for